In May 1993, 2 8-hour oleoresin capsicon aerosol subject restraint devices training classes were provided to over 40 Pinellas Sheriff's Office law enforcement members. This marked the beginning of Pinellas Sheriff's Office field testing phase for the purpose of evaluating several different devices. During this field testing phase, members from the classes discharged their OC ASRs 19 times. The following video contains personal accounts of 4 of those events. The deputies were randomly assigned the OC ASR type, which was determined the best suited for Pinellas Sheriff's Office use. As they relate their incidents, what is said should be evaluated within the context of this training. Our sincere thanks to them for their assistance in this video.
On my incident, what happened is me and Paul Halley were working Baskins area, which is a 2-man car. We had found a guy that possibly had a warrant for his arrest. He was not combative when we first met him, but he was not willing to tell us who he was. We had 2 or 3 other parties there that were telling us this is who he was and that he had a warrant for his arrest. So what we did is we detained him in the backseat of our cruiser, unhandcuffed, basically because he wasn't combative, he just wasn't cooperating. Put him in the back seat, and the other parties that were there got us his information, his driver's license, and some other information that verified who he was. And we sent off to Brevard County for the verification of the warrant. It was a felony warrant, so we knew that they would probably take him. And in the 20 or 30 minutes that it took to detain him in the backseat, to get the warrant confirmed, he was detained in the backseat of the cruiser. And over this 20 or 30 minutes, his agitation began to swell. He started making threats towards us. This address where we were at was in view of where Tackett had just recently been killed, and he had made reference that when he got out of the cruiser, he was going to take our gun and do the same thing to Tackett, or do the same thing to us that happened to Tackett. He'd also told us that he was charged twice with escape, and that there's only 2 of us officers there, and he was going to be able to overpower us and escape again. His agitation continued to develop as he began banging on the windows, verbally challenging us, telling us exactly what he was going to do, and that he was going to beat his way free and run. After the warrants were confirmed, like I said, it took about 20 minutes, so his agitation really began to swell, and in the backseat of the cruiser, by the time they did get confirmed, he was really going. We confirmed him, and I told him through the cage, I said, "You're under arrest, we're going to take you out of the cruiser and place you into handcuffs and transport you out to jail." Well, he had told us then again, and reassured us that he was going to escape and he was going to fight and that we were going to have a problem with him. And I told him, I said, "I'm going to give you specific directions on getting out of this cruiser, and if you vary from any of my directions or show me any kind of aggressive movements, you're going to get sprayed." Well, he didn't take any heed to the spray, and he had a few choice words of what he thought about my spray. So I had him place his hands up on the plexiglass, which he did. He complied with that completely. We opened up the back door, and we gave him step-by-step commands of getting out of the cruiser. He complied completely with it. Put his hands up on the top of the car once he got out. He gave us his left hand. We got that handcuffed, and then we asked him for his right hand. Well, he brought it around and began to give it to us, but then he decided, no, this wasn't going to happen. He started pulling his hand away. But Deputy Halley was the one that was handcuffing, and I was merely observing him with my spray in the loaded position. And when Paul started having a hard time with his right hand, we'd already talked it over that if he did resist at all, Paul would just push him and get away from him. Well, Paul started struggling with his right hand, and the subject began to turn around towards his right and face Paul. So Paul just pushed him into the cruiser, and I stepped in and sprayed him. The distance that I sprayed him was only about 12 to 18 inches away from his face. And right after we exposed him, he immediately had his eyes closed. His breath was just taken away, and he stopped all struggling, and he just stood there. We gave him verbal commands to get down to the ground, and it seemed more like he was dazed or confused as opposed to getting aggressive. And he got escorted down to the ground. offered no resistance whatsoever. He offered his hands up when we told him. We got him into handcuffs, and we just gave him verbal commands to breathe, and we talked him through the exposure so that he would limit his effectiveness. We watched him for about 10 minutes, and he seemed to be recuperating fine, so we loaded him up into the cruiser again. And the whole time, after he got exposed, all he could do was beg us to help him. He asked for an ambulance because his face was burning so bad. He had told me that he was asthmatic, and I told him that shouldn't affect him. He recuperated fine from the effects. He got his breathing back. Even during the whole time that we took him out to the jail, from the time I exposed him to the time we walked into the jail, probably about 20 to 25 minutes. And even when we walked him into the jail, his eyes were still in a closed position. He didn't want to open them. And he was real pleasant to be around. He just begged us for help and basically told us he wasn't going to hurt us after we exposed him. I was real happy with him.
Recently, I responded to a disturbance call, Quality Inn, Tarpon Springs. Upon my arrival, I was met by the clerk at the Tarpon Springs Motel. He directed me to the rear of the courtyard where a subject was screaming and yelling at the top of his lungs. Apparently had a disagreement with the room. The subject didn't have enough money to pay for it. I walked to the back of the courtyard and confronted the subject and asked him to identify himself and speak with me. He told me in a few words to, once you go, screw yourself. And I asked him again to come and talk with me. He refused. As I approached him, he began to run from me. I chased him to a room where I was able to subdue him to the ground. After I was subduing him, another subject appeared out of the room, came up and stood behind me. At that point, I asked that subject to step back. It was then that Deputy Kolnicki arrived, and I explained to Deputy Kolnicki that I wanted the other subject to step back. This subject was being placed on arrest for disorderly conduct. Well, the second subject Deputy Kolnicki was speaking with refused, and as I was directing my attention to him, the other subject stood up and punched me square in the chest, knocking me backwards. I chased the subject then across the courtyard, where I was able to again subdue him to the ground. At that point, he sustained a laceration to his head, and as I was on top of him trying to get his hands behind his back to cuff him, I was attacked by the second subject where he ran me with his shoulder in the back and knocked me temporarily off the other subject. At that point, Deputy Kolnicki appeared and began struggling with the second subject on the ground. It was at that point, I believe, that Deputy Kolnicki sprayed him.
Well, what happened with him is he kind of calmed down after the first interface with you and his brother there, and once you began foot pursuing the other guy and took him down, that's when he came running up past me and jumped on your back. I pulled him off of you, and he hit me, backed away, squared off, and then charged at me again, at which time I grabbed him in a headlock and just pulled him to the ground while he's punching the heck out of the back of my head and hitting me in the back with his right hand. I had him in a headlock with my left hand, and I was trying to find my OC canister on my belt. I finally found it, and I put it in his facial area, probably within 6 inches of his face, and due to the anxiety I was under, I kind of gave him a little bit more of a dose than I probably should have, but the majority of it actually went up on my uniform shirt and went over the side of my face. He got up because I released him and got away from him for my safety to see what kind of effect it was going to have on him. He actually stood up and ran about 20 feet. He dropped down to one knee again, and I kind of took a position behind him to the side of him, like at a 2.5. And was instructing him to just stay on the ground and relax, that the effects of the OC will go away. He, I think, listened to where my voice was. He lunged up again and struck me and began to run again. I could see that his eyes were starting to really close real tight when he started to run again. And I didn't want him to run into a concrete stairwell, which he was running towards. He stopped temporarily in a flower bed that was layered with mulch, and Deputy Judd had arrived on the scene at that time and assisted me with taking him to the ground. I had to use my asp on him because he was still struggling with us. I just hit him in the sciatic nerve. But then I think finally the effects of the OC attacked his respiratory system. It finally got into his nose and everything, and he just laid there really calm and really wasn't breathing. I reassured him, and Deputy Judd has also been trained in the use of the OC, so he stood by with him while I went back to assist Deputy Atkins with the brother, who was still struggling with him. When I got back over there, Sergeant Una was also helping him, trying to get the subject subdued. What it was he was laying on the ground and he had his hands interlocked underneath his body. And Una was on his right side and Atkins was on his left, and he wouldn't give up his hands. After I repeatedly told him to give up his hands, he had a few choice words for me too. And both these guys are farm hands and pretty stocky and in good shape. He started to raise himself up off the ground. I yelled OC to alert him and Una, and it actually got him right in the face and the laceration that was on his forehead and everything, and he immediately just dropped to the ground and threw his hands behind his back and just said, do what you got to do, but get this crap off my face. He was really going ballistic because the stuff just attacked his respiratory system immediately, closed his eyes, and it was burning the heck out of the cut that he had on his face. We couldn't just get his hands because he was so bloody from the laceration he had on his head. It was just like, it was like he was covered with Vaseline. We couldn't get a grip on him. Like I said, the overspray that I got from the brother brushed the side of my face, and when I shot the other guy that was on the ground that they were so struggling with, he actually got some on his hands and the side of his face, and so did Sergeant Una. But the fact that it got on them, it didn't affect their performance at all. They had a little bit of irritation, but it really didn't stop them from doing their job. We escorted the two guys up to the front of the hotel. Fire rescue was already on scene. I sat the one brother that I had taken down in the flower bed in the back of my car with the air conditioning on. He recovered in about 30 minutes. He still had a little bit of irritation when I brought him to the jail, and they let him wash up and everything after we got him there. And Lonnie, I had instructed him how to get the other guy to recover. He had to go to the hospital, but I told him to make sure that they don't wipe his face down or anything for at least 20 to 30 minutes. But he can tell you how he reacted better than I can because I was pretty much concentrated on the guy I had during the recovery period.
Basically, when I was transporting him to the hospital, he was stating that his face felt like it was burning, and he was having difficulty breathing. Being not trained in the OC, I feel that if Deputy Kolnicki didn't have it, that we would have had to use more force just in order to have him place his hands behind his back so he could be handcuffed. There's no doubt in my mind.
Okay, my incident occurred about a month ago down in St. Pete, Haines Road, And what had occurred is Deputy Rare, a female deputy, had called out a traffic stop on Haines Road and 59th Street. Shortly thereafter, she called for immediate backup and for us to expedite. Myself, Sergeant Steinbaum, and Deputy McLean arrived on scene. What she had is she had a DUI, an elderly female that was driving a smaller compact car, and her son. Her son was about 6'4", about 240 pounds. He was big, and like your gentleman, he was a farmhand, very, very big, very stocky man. He was becoming agitated that they didn't stop at all. He had been drinking all day. He was quite intoxicated. He was quite aggressive towards Deputy Rare. We split the two subjects up. Subsequently, Deputy Rare arrested his mother for DUI. While placing her in custody, her son became increasingly aggressive towards myself, and Sergeant Steinbaum was standing by with him. As his aggressions grew and his voice grew louder and louder towards the situation, we thought it was best to be placed under arrest and custody
disorderly conduct, which he was done. It did take 3 of us to put him in the cruiser. He didn't resist physically, but his aggression was still there. We put him in the back of Debbie McLean's cruiser. What had occurred is his aggressions grew to a point where he began kicking at the doors, kicking at the windows. He was wearing cowboy boots at the time. He was kicking at them so hard that I'm sure that he would have, if not knocked the door off the hinges, the glass was definitely coming out. The subject was advised by myself and by Sergeant Steinbaugh quite a few times that he did not stop his actions if he was going to get sprayed. His answer was that, you can spray me all you want, I'll just close my eyes, I don't care. He kicked again at the door and at the window. It was decided by myself and Sergeant Steinbaugh that we would use OC. It was also decided that because of his size and because he was so big, that to actually try and pull him out of the cruiser probably would have got one of us very hurt, especially if we caught with one of his feet wearing those cowboy boots. I simply opened up the door where his feet were. I backed up about a foot, so he was about 4 to 5 feet away. Put the OC up using a burster. I hit him directly in the face. Some overspray hit the back glass. The subject immediately stopped all aggression. He started crying out for help, begging us to get it off his face. He attempted to come back out of the cruiser. I'm sure it was just an attempt to get the stuff off his face. I advised him that if he stepped out of the cruiser, I was going to spray him a second time. He sat right back down in the cruiser. All he wanted was to help him get it off his face. He said that he couldn't breathe. I began talking to him, telling him to cough, telling him to breathe. This helped him a great deal. I kept reassuring him that the effects would wear off shortly thereafter. And he was like a baby. It was no problem at all. About 3 weeks after this, I saw the subject again down on Haynes Road, and he asked me if I was the one that sprayed him with the OC, and I told him that I was. His reply was that after that experience, he would never again have to come up against an officer in an aggressive manner. He never wanted to be sprayed with that, and I'm sure he's been telling his friends about it in the local bars.
When you had to transport your subject to the hospital, was that because of the OC or just his injuries to the face?
No, just solely because of his laceration he has sustained when he fell to the ground. At the time, we were just telling him, assuring him that the effects would wear off, but no, it was not, just because of his laceration.
Did the hospital have any problem dealing with the OC, or were they more concerned with just the laceration?
They were just really concerned with the laceration. In fact, the paramedic at the scene even mentioned that he wasn't, he didn't have the information about the OC spray and really didn't know if there was a treatment or how to treat him.
That's when I had told him how to treat the effects. I had to explain to the paramedics that we were the Sunstar paramedics.
The hospital, did they ask any questions about the exposure?
They said that they have seen cases before, but they just treated his laceration, like I say.
Pete, do you feel that from taking the hit in training with the OC class that you prepared for the effects of having an overspray during the incident?
Most definitely. Because when I took that hit, for one, it gave me the respect on not to abuse the use of it, and secondly, I knew what kind of effects it had on me personally, so when I did spray him in close proximity to my face, because he was right in a headlock, I basically aimed where I wanted to expose him and turned my head the other way because I knew that there was no way that I was not going to get any on me using the burster in that close proximity. Like I said, it did spray on me. It got on the side of my cheek and it irritated my shoulder where it had saturated my shirt, but it didn't affect my performance at all. Like, I got it on my hands from having to deal with him, but all I did was wash my hands off with some soap and water right there that the paramedics had, and they gave me some Calstat, and it was fine.
Would you agree, I think we all would here, that without the OC in these situations, it would have become increasingly worse? Someone would have probably sustained great injury, maybe death?
I definitely think so. With the guy that me and Paul Alley had, he was big enough where he could have caused a lot of harm if he wanted to. He was intoxicated. I don't know if he was on drugs, he wouldn't admit to that. But just his size, he was a little shorter than I am, but he probably had 20 or 30 pounds on me, and he was a laborer, so all of his poundage was working muscle. And everybody knows, anytime you try and take somebody that's intoxicated and or on drugs into custody, they just don't feel the pain that a normal person or somebody that's not intoxicated feels. And this guy, being as fired up as he was, knowing that he was going to fight, and he already predetermined that he was going to fight, he was just trying to pick his time to do it. I have no doubt in my mind that we would have had a knockdown, drag-out fight, whereas if not me and Paul getting hurt, he would have been hurt bad enough just to get him into custody. And this eliminated that completely. He was down and out and not even wanting to put up a fight. So I was real happy with it.
Both our guys had been drinking quite a bit that night too. They were celebrating the birthday of the gentleman that got the laceration, and they were both extremely intoxicated, but they were real super aggressive. The one guy that I ended up getting in the scrap with, he was 6'3" and weighed about 220 pounds. And unless I had used that, I feel I probably would have been a lot more seriously hurt, because this guy was definitely aggressive and he was charging at me. So either he or myself would have got really hurt bad trying to take this guy into custody.
I think OC is definitely one of the best assets they've probably given us as far as being a patrol on the road.
You've mentioned that taking the hit gives us respect for it. I have no doubt, because we've been, I think all of us have been approached by people that have been around when OC's been used, but are not OC trained and have not taken a hit from it. Every one of them complain about burning sensation, their eyes hurt, their skin hurt, but without taking a hit, they have no real idea what it's going to feel like on them if they do take a hit. So when they're complaining about these minor little burning sensations, you just don't know what that feeling is going to be. And if you're going to carry it, you need to know in case you would get exposed to it, and so that you can help the person out that's just been exposed.
It also gives you the respect not to abuse it or misuse it, because if you're clowning around with this stuff, it'll really mess you up for a while.
Well, me and Sean had an incident just with SWAT. We had been exposed to it. SWAT decides we're going to use this on a bathroom while we're making entry. The entry took a little bit longer than we thought, and the OC was deployed into the bathroom. Well, when our team went in, me and Sean were the only ones that have been exposed to it as of yet. So when we made entry, the team, we all know the effects of the other gases that we use. However, this was a lot more pungent, a lot stronger. And just the other team members that hadn't been exposed to it seemed to get an awakening to what OC really is. So even they were shocked, and we've been exposed to gas quite a bit.
I remember the first opportunity that Lonnie had to talk to me after this incident we were involved in. He told me he was really, as a non-user, and having seen no training in it whatsoever, he was really impressed with how well it worked.
I think that's the majority of the young people on the street that haven't been trained in OC yet. When they see it on a call and they see it at work and the effects, they're very much impressed by it.